Yeah, hello, folks. Welcome to Power Report 14. This is Dementia-Thon II. We are starting now a couple minutes before the debate festivities begin. I am here, Dan from the internet, joined by Bam,
That's
reliable
me.
comrade. Bam, yes, say your name so people will understand what's going on if they listen to audio. Joined by Cesar again, Cesar.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
And joined, thank you for making it your time in this busy schedule, Sean.
Hello. Hello, humans.
Yes, this is going to be, it's awesome. We have the whole Power Report crew together as we do this last
Gains all here.
presidential debate. Y'all, it's starting 5 minutes from when I'm talking right now. And I'm going to be doing some stuff to like set up, make sure people know. If you're watching, if you're one of the people who are watching, share the stream, like it, and comment on it. So, you know, we make it go.
I'm about to share it right now.
Word.
I'm in here.
Hell yes, I got my mouse back. This is awesome.
Put my keyboard down on my lap.
Any of you guys excited for anything about this debate?
Yeah,
I want someone to throw a shoe. I want another. I want to go wilding.
Yeah, like that's the thing, Bam. And it's good that we start off this like, what are you expecting? What's the debate kind of gubbins and stuff going on? The vice presidential debate was oddly, I wouldn't say it was full of substance because it wasn't. It was just like politicians lying, but it's the usual politicians lying. It's the kind of thing we're very well used to in this process. But the first debate was monumental. There was a lot of, I mean, it wasn't a good debate by any means. Of course, opinions weren't being debated on either side, but it was just a fight. It was a brawl. Joe Biden and Donald Trump were, Donald Trump was trying to drag Joe Biden into the mud with him, and Joe Biden kind of went there with him sometimes and didn't other times. It was a back and forth. It was crazy. A lot of people were talking over each other, so much so that this debate has rules. So the opposite candidate who isn't speaking will be muted during the opening statements, and that's been agreed upon by both campaigns. As I'm sure one of the bingo cards will be the moderator pointing out that both campaigns agreed on something that both candidates are ignoring. So that's going to be one. But yeah, this is set to be a Hail Mary. Donald Trump's doing lower in the polls. I think we all know from 2016 to be a little bit skeptical of polls to some extent, but Joe Biden's doing well. He's doing well in key states. He's doing well in swing states. Trump seems to be holding his ground in Florida, and he needs Florida to win, it looks like. But this is going to be desperation hockey from the Trump campaign for sure. That's at least what I'm expecting. And for Biden, he just has to do the same thing he's been doing for the past couple of races, which is don't lose ground. Just let Trump fuck up on his own, but don't lose ground where you are right now. But I'll leave open the floor to what other folks think.
Yeah, the big thing to be interesting is all the COVID precautions and stuff, because last time, Big Daddy Trump over here had to get COVID, and obviously their campaign didn't do much in regards to it for the last debate. So it'll be interesting to see this one, what all the procedures are, if they're going to be wearing masks and so on and so forth. Some Melania with the mask, which is interesting. So
yeah, in the previous debate, none of them were wearing masks, almost defiantly. So it's interesting to see them change their tone. The previous debate was also right before Trump got diagnosed publicly.
Exactly.
So.
Well, they were wearing them, then they took them off ceremoniously.
Oh, the classic protest. We love that. Yeah. Okay, the debate should be starting momentarily. I'll say y'all on the call. When we're not talking during the debate itself, let's just mute ourselves. And then if you have a comment to make while it's going on, just unmute yourself.
That's fine.
Hi, Cesar.
Hi, Bam.
Sean in the building.
What up?
Sean E, bro.
Caesar's beefing with y'all anyway, so.
Stupid. No.
Bro. Did I died when you said that, C's, by the way?
This is Sean E, bro. Sean now. He's about to get a job at Hot 97 now.
I'm down for it. Put me on that young contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, can Audio Face get some funding now or what?
So we got somebody.
This way, y'all are on the way. Keep it up.
C-SPAN.
Yeah. We're gonna start the debate shortly.
Let's get some audio on this hoe.
Mm-hmm.
Be sure to folks in the audience, be sure to share the stream, put on Twitter, Instagram, all the stuffs, so we know we're live. Participate in the chat as well. We're going to be reading chat stuff
I'll be typing chat.
as we're going. Yeah, we'll be reading and typing in chat as well. So make sure you're joining us on there. And if you're on the podcast, well, this is some odd, fun little time before we begin the thing. But yes, later on in the podcast, we'll have our dissection of the debate once it's said and done. So look forward to that.
Let me get some paper here. Maybe I'll have some notes to take.
Ooh.
I should probably actually open up a doc. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I usually have like some notes in Google Keep as well.
How many over under on how many times Trump is gonna tap the mic to see if it's on or not? I could definitely see him going like.
Good evening from Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Kristen Welker of NBC News, and I welcome you to the final 2020 presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, boos, or other interruptions, except right now, as we welcome to the stage former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald J. Trump.
This is Sports Center.
Go massing him.
The war criminals unite.
And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly when the 2 minutes have expired. After that, both microphones will remain on, but on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please speak one at a time. The goal is for you to hear each other and for the American people to hear every word of what you both have to say. And so with that, if you're ready, let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators. We're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month. distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day, and there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular, that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And
I thought
frankly,
this didn't work
he ran
during
the
the first
H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster,
every
far
time I
less
thought it was a
lethal.
Democratic hoax,
but
though.
it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now. But it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic It was horrible. We didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act.
I wonder when
to
we'll
make
get
sure
to the
we go
Woodward
out and
bit
get whatever
about
is
Trump
needed
downplaying
out there
COVID the
to
whole
protect
time because he
people.
didn't want to scare
And again,
people.
I go back to
I wonder
this.
either
He had
the
nothing,
moderator
he did
or
virtually
Biden will bring
nothing.
this
And
up because
then he
I
gets out of the
kind of doubt it
hospital,
at this point, but it's
and
kind of
he talks
relevant.
about, don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump,
Come on,
Say
man.
over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every
Especially if
meeting
there's
I
golf
had,
in that room.
every meeting I had, and I'd meet a
'Cause he's
lot
been
of
golfing
families,
for about a
including
year,
Gold
this
Star
presidency.
families and military families. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous, and you catch it. And I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals, and now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have
But they
to
don't
recover.
have the same
We
access to
can't
healthcare.
close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please,
For
and then
30
I have a
seconds.
question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch out of habit where their wife or husband is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that he came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
I take full responsibility. No, it's China's fault.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry. The warm weather. Don't worry. Maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months.
You don't understand my impeccable sense of
She was
humor.
dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did. You certainly did.
I talked about his xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing
Wait
the
a minute.
border to
Did he really
Chinese
say Nancy
coming
Pelosi
to
was
the United
dancing
States.
on
All
the
right, I
streets
want
of
to talk about both of
Chinatown?
your different
That
strategies
did indeed
to handle
He
happen.
thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the neighborhood, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight, and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people.
But
all
Florida
he talks
has
about is
some
shutdowns.
outbreaks,
No,
okay.
we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools.
Don't be talking about
And it's
Florida.
like,
That's
as
Trump's
an
only
example,
chance at winning
I have
now.
a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to
Slow
open the
genes,
schools.
not able to do
transmittal
anything.
rate to the teachers is very small. But I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country.
Teachers have
You
died
can't do
from COVID,
this.
by the
We
way,
can't
because
keep
their
this country
asymptomatic
closed.
kids
This
gave
is
it
a
to them.
massive
So just keep that
country
in
with a
mind.
massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse.
Yeah, how do you
We have
fix
to
that?
open our country.
Universal health
You know,
care.
I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says,
Listen,
close
grandma's
it down.
gotta
Vice President
die.
Biden, your
Simply
response.
not true.
Grandma's
We ought to
gotta
be able to
die.
walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but they need resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about
Not
plexiglass,
true.
these are restaurants
Literally
that are
not
dying.
true. It was in
These are
Bloomberg today.
businesses with no money.
Nothing has changed in New York.
Putting a
They're
plexiglass is
equal as far as people
unbelievably
moving out and
expensive.
people coming
And
back
it's not
in.
the answer.
New York's
I mean, you're
just
going
a
to sit
city that's
there in
gonna
a
survive. I'm
cubicle
sorry.
wrapped around with plastic.
This is all horseshit.
These are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You
But
just
you can-
can't. Take a look at New York
Google's
and what's
dying,
happened
Amazon's
to my
dying.
wonderful city for
They can no longer
so
be in their
many years. I
offices.
loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look
Vice
at what
President
New
Biden.
York has done in terms of turning the
I mean,
curve
Lehman
down in
Brothers
terms
died,
of the
but-
number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way
New York
does.
is popping right
Blue
now.
states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're
Except
the red
Florida.
states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when
about...
you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed. And they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony. But he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew.
Said,
look,
and you said,
nobody knew
and
what
you said,
this
and
thing
others
was.
said.
Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot.
And I said,
but Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we found out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
The Wall Street one, I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money as president and as somebody that knows most of those people. I could call
That's
the
right.
heads
Your
of Wall
president
Street,
just
the
said
heads
that
of
he doesn't
every
raise
company
money
in
off of
America.
Wall Street.
I would blow
While in
away
the next
every
sentence
record, but I
talking
don't want
about
to do
how
that
he could do
because it
really
puts me in
well
a
at
bad
raising money
position.
from Wall
And
Street.
then you bring up Wall
But who's
Street.
the
You
corrupt
shouldn't be
one?
bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not
Absolutely.
me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able to.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Average contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's stalking them a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part, as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and you know, someday you're going to have to explain, why did you get 3.5? I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia.
That's chump change.
About your thing last night, I knew all about that. And through John, John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said, the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so bad. They took over the submarine port. You remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond. 30 seconds. And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever, number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that,
if you want to do, you would have done it like $6 years ago.
I asked them a week ago, I said, What did I pay?
Like, thank you.
They said,
Hello.
sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse me.
Prepaid
And it wasn't
taxes?
written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son
Biden's
gave
face
you,
on this.
they
He
even
needs
have
to.
a statement.
He needs to not
that we
look
have to
like he's
give
getting head
10%
faked. I know it's
to the
ridiculous,
big
but
man.
that's going to
You're
get
the big
memed.
man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to
These
give
are Trump's
10%
Hail
to the
Marys.
big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions
I have
about
to
all of this,
respond to
but I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have
soon
a
as the audit is
deadline for
finished.
when you're going to release them
I
to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
I have a
don't
lot
have
of
a time.
people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than
If
paying.
Trump were being
I paid in
treated
advance.
unfairly
It's
by the
called
IRS,
prepaying your
he
taxes. I
wouldn't
paid
get to
in
have
advance.
I want to
conversations
ask you
with you.
both
He's talking
about
a
questions
deal. What about
regarding
when
your
you, regular
potential
people,
foreign
when you want to have a
entanglements and
deal with the
questions that
IRS, but
have
you're
been
behind on
raised
your
to give you
taxes?
both
Can
a
you call a
chance
guy
to
up?
talk
Can you
about
call a
this
guy
more
up?
broadly.
No.
Respond
Then
very
Trump
quickly,
can
and
get
then
the
I'll get
fuck
to
out
my
of here about
question.
being treated
Why
unfairly.
does
Just
he's been
release your
saying this
shit.
for
He
4
doesn't want
years?
that because we know it's
Show
bad.
us. Just show us. Stop
Turn up,
playing
Dan.
around.
Turn up.
You've been saying for 4 years
Everybody
you're going to
knows
release
it.
your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
Very
So
quickly, President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million.
He's changing the number. It used to be
They
like
went
12
through
angry
everything I
Democrats. It
had,
was like Ocean's
including my
12
tax
angry
returns.
Democrats.
And they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. 48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent 1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because
All
the
right.
kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq. Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live
thought we
very
were
well.
muting
You have
people, but
houses
go ahead,
all
go
over the
off
place.
then.
You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships appropriate or unethical?
Charisma.
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Never
President
to
Trump,
deal with
let me
China.
let me
By the
ask
way,
my question to you.
But
and
could
then
I just
you'll-
one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. 183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy
I'm going to let the Vice President
That's
respond to that quickly, and then I need to get
dishonest.
to a question to you. Very
No
quickly.
basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about,
Earlier in
it's
this
listed.
debate, he
The bank
just said that
account
he
was
didn't
in
have foreign bank accounts in Ukraine and
2013.
Russia and all this
That's when
stuff.
it
Now
was.
he's
It was
saying,
open to
they're
it
every,
was
I
closed
don't know,
in
I just said this,
2015, I
how would
believe.
I know this
And then I
business?
decided, because I was going to do, I was
I
thinking
hope
about doing a deal in
America
China
as a
like
whole is
millions
seeing
of other people.
how much of an
I was
ass
thinking
clown this
about
man
it,
is.
and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open.
Didn't Jimmy Carter
and I
need
closed
to
it.
get rid of his
Okay.
peanut farm
Excuse
because
me.
it was
And
seen as a
then,
foreign
unlike
thing?
him, where he's
He
vice
has to give up
president
his
and he
peanut
does
farm, and he has
business,
to give up all his business
I then
interests, which is
decided
like
to
billions
run
of
for
dollars.
president after
Yes,
that. That was before.
Jimmy Carter,
So I
get rid of your
closed it
peanut farm.
before I
Meanwhile,
even
Donald Trump,
ran
just
for
let your
president,
kids run the
let
Trump,
alone became president.
your kids who are also
Big
your
difference.
advisors run
He
the
is
Trump
the vice president of the
Foundation.
United
Sure,
States,
do that. Have
and his
fun.
son, his brother, and his other brother are
Complete
getting rich.
opposite world
They're like
here.
a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up money every
President Trump,
place he
thank you.
goes.
We do
Not
need to
true.
move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. There have, of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it, and that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to
Yes.
respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and then
His
we're
son
going to move on
walked
to
out with
North
$1.5 billion
Korea.
from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy,
true.
though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers. because
Taxpayers'
China,
money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money. Didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China paid
true.
$28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on
farmers
dumped
got
steel
socialism.
because they
They
were
got
killing our
taxpayer
steel
money
industry. We
because
were
of
not going to have a
Trump's
steel
screw-ups
industry.
in the trade war.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
My response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's
got a
hurting
malarkey
badly.
drop, y'all.
If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making in the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea. I do want to turn to 10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about North
I'm not a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
that's why I got elected. Let's get off the subject of China. Let's talk sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next
So
segment.
when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House. Right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him.
Let's just not take Trump's word on how this meeting went down, shall we?
We have a
I don't
different
like
kind
to
of
trust
relationship.
Obama, but
we have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, "Oh, there's going to be trouble."
Also,
I said,
it's lying because
not.
Obama would
He's not
drone
going to do
North Korea
that.
anyway.
And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul. Millions of people would be dead right now.
President
we
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and
seconds.
I have a good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, "Why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea?" I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy, who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
Kristen, they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds, President.
They tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I got to give him a chance to respond to that before we move on.
And that's okay. You know what, North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good relationship with leaders of other countries is a good thing.
We have a lot of questions to get to.
That's like saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on.
Hitler
The
dropped.
reason
Hitler
he
dropped.
would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
and
let's
it didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's move on and talk about American families.
He left me a mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do need to move on.
They left me a mess. North Korea was a mess. And in fact, if you remember the first 2 or 3 months, there was a very dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a they left us a mess. And Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country had.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court
Just make
because
it universal,
Obamacare is
damn it.
no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good.
Premiums
what we'd
are
like
up,
to
though.
do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will
We're gonna
have to
call up
run
Arnold
it, and we'll have
Schwarzenegger. We're gonna do
Obamacare, but it'll be better
terminating.
run. But it no
It'd be great.
longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time, and I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care. Far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate
Sorry, I'm
all
like
of
half
those
a truly
policies.
in, but did
These
Trump
are
just say
people
he's
that
going to take
love
back the
their health
House?
care. People that have been
Yep.
successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have
Okay.
180 million plans, 180 million people, families, under what he wants to do, which will basically
How many
be
millions of
socialized
people
medicine.
got
He won't even have a
uninsured
choice.
under Trump?
They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care, and we're going to do even better.
Okay,
Let me
Vice
respond.
President Biden, yes, this is for you. Your health care plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option. It'll become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal
Shit ain't
in
Biden
your
care. That's
state to
Romney
get
care,
Medicaid,
y'all.
you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I didn't. Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare.
I mean, at least Joe
They did not
Biden
lose
is
their
being
insurance
honest in everything
unless they
except the name
chose
alone.
they
But this
wanted to go
is
to
Romney
something else.
care. He loves private
Lastly,
insurance.
we're going to make
He
sure
wants
we're in a situation
universality,
that
which is
we
fine, but it's still going
actually
to be as
protect
costly as Trump
pre-existing.
is
There's no
complaining
way he
about
can protect pre-existing
him
conditions.
making it,
None.
even though
Zero.
Trump has made
You
it more
can't do it
costly
in the
because he
ether.
wants Obamacare
He's
killed.
been talking
Because the
about this for
Republicans
a
want
long
Obamacare
time.
killed.
He's never
Joe
come up
Biden
with a
wants
plan. I guess we're going
slightly
to get
better, and
the
that's kind of the
pre-existing
case this
conditions
election.
plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're
It's
getting
infrastructure
anxious.
week.
The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response
I say it's
to them?
ridiculous. It's like saying that, we're the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who, in fact, are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick? Because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under. We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President Trump,
Excuse me, he was there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like he went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania, and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask
he goes for a year. There will be no fracking.
We have a number of topics we're going to get to.
That's a big question.
We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized medicine.
What does that have to do
Vice
with
President,
healthcare?
your response, please.
My response is people deserve
Trump trying to
have
marinate the
affordable
mods
healthcare,
here.
Period. Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anity on health care. Not a thing.
Tristan, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine and health care. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroyed, and destroying your Social Security. And this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay,
let's let
Vice President Biden respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's
Biden,
a very
your
confused
response.
guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare, come on.
He tried to get rid of it. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records. He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to move on. Mr. President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to
will
have time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars. Because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on.
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to
the
next question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House because of her.
You're the president,
Nancy
asshole.
Pelosi doesn't
Figure it
want to
out.
approve anything because she'd
Figure
love
it
to have
out.
some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans,
I am
and
the
it's gone through,
strongest
including
president
the
ever,
Democrats. In all
but
fairness,
everybody
this
is
one she
kicking my
doesn't
ass
want. It's near the
repeatedly.
election
So
because she thinks it helps her politically.
I'm
I
strong.
think it hurts her politically.
All right,
By the
Mr.
way,
Vice President,
you know, the Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
let me follow up with you, Vice President
we made a
Biden,
deal, the
because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they could keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with these guys?
The bill that was passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high-crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally.
Is this the point when you're
We were gonna
sick
take
of
care of
hearing the
everything for
guy
them. And what
play
that
his
does, and I'd
one
love to
good
do that, I'd
song
love to help
over
him,
and
but what
over
that
again,
does,
and you're
everybody all
like,
over the world will
dude,
start
enough
pouring into our
Freebird.
country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
By the way,
I want to.
if I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to get
said we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
recently. We have to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses. How are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. Is that still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
in
what I really like,
in
a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. what's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids.
This should be good.
You've since
the
reversed
healthcare
your
shit was all
zero-tolerance
capped
policy,
because both sides
but the
were
United
capping.
States can't locate
And I'll go off on that
the
later,
parents
but
of more than
immigration should be
500
good.
children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had.
Human
We're over
traffickers.
400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through.
But how will you reunite
Let me
these
just tell
kids
you,
with their families,
Let me just tell you,
Mr.
they
President?
built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you
They
have a
built
plan to
cages.
reunite the kids?
Yes,
with
we're
their
working on
families?
it we're
Trump's best
trying
argument,
very hard.
honestly.
But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this
525
conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500-plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up
Kristen,
question.
they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
They did it. We changed.
did not
They built the
separate
cages.
they-
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say this.
immigration.
They went
10
down.
seconds,
We
and
brought
then I need to ask
reporters,
you a question.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because it made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids,
like, that's great,
they're going to be
but they're talking
immediately
about pathway
certified
to
again to be able to
citizenship under
stay in
George
this
W.
country
fucking
and put
Bush.
on a path to
All right, so it's
citizenship.
not going to happen
The
under Joe
idea
Biden, and
that
I'm just going to keep it real with you right
they
now.
are being sent home by this guy, and they want to do that, is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River, and it's illegal. And you say, oh, no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
President
Kristen,
Trump,
he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've
We
changed
did.
without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
Wrong.
Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following on the following premise: why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
so
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It
on.
just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case.
Just mute him right now, please. Mute him.
They don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the
Racism
really
is bleeding from his bones.
I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President Trump, let's give Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
You don't know the law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Know the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out.
Mask
They don't come back.
off.
All right, let's move on.
But we don't have to worry about it because
section.
they terminated it, so we don't have to worry about it
Let's
anymore.
move on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right. Let's talk about our next section, which is race in America.
This is a cat break.
And I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans
cat break now.
experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has her graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. What I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, yes, yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators.
Biden supported
Nobody
the crime
has done
bill,
more
but he
for the
didn't
black
use the phrase
community
super predators.
than
That was
Donald
Hillary
Trump.
Clinton.
And if you look, with the
Just some live fact-checking
of
that the moderator
Abraham Lincoln,
refuses to do.
possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform. Obama
I mean, what does he
and
call Latin
Joe
Americans?
didn't do it.
He calls them
I
rapists
don't
and
even
so on
think
and so
they
forth.
tried
So
because
it's
they
not
had
much
no
better.
chance at doing it. They might have
Shithole
wanted to do it,
countries.
but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the Black and Hispanic communities, and then historically Black colleges and universities. After 3
All
years
he
of
ever
coming
talks
to the
about is
office,
money
I love
when
some
it
of
comes
those
to
guys.
Black
They were great.
people.
They came into the office.
And sadly, sometimes that
I said, what are you
works.
doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year.
We're
We
talking
have
about
to come back
institutionalized
because
racism.
President
He's trying to talk
Obama
about
would
money
never give them
again.
long-term funding.
Again,
and
he talks
I did.
about money.
10-year long-term funding,
Because
and I
that's
gave
all
them
Ice
Ice
Cube
more
Cube
money
cares about.
than they asked for because they said, I
Ice
think
Cube
you
just
need
wants a
more.
check.
And I said, the only
Ice
bad
Cube-
part
Ice
about
Cube
this
is definitely
I
like-
may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved historically Black colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both
Also,
of
I haven't
your
seen his
records,
money,
but
by
your
the way.
response
Where's his-
to that,
where's his
Vice
cool
My
extra
President.
money
response
he's
to that
talking
is
about?
I never,
ready.
ever said what he
I ain't seen his
accused me
money
of
yet.
saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000,
Get
though,
your money from
after the crime
Bolsonaro.
bill had been in
I'm Black and
in
Latino.
the
I
law
should
for
get
a
double the
while,
money.
This is the
Get
guy
your
who
money
said,
from
the
Bolsonaro.
problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent Black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you? You were vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this. But you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions.
Please, let's do some
Well,
free
I'll tell you
advertising. What are you drinking?
I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this
Homie
race.
playing video
I'm
games.
anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is
man,
on the ballot.
Let me just,
Our character is on the ballot.
Hey, is
Look
that
at
one
us
of those
closely.
Trump
Let me
virtual
ask some
courses
follow-up.
you're playing on?
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up
is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China,
Trump
other
golf
countries,
VR.
Iraq, if this
Let's
is
see
true,
that new China one
then
they're
he's a
building.
corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling
is
you a
simple.
corrupt politician.
Nobody's
Take a look
President
at the
Trump, I
laptop
want to
from
stay
hell.
on the issue
Excuse
of
me,
race. We're
take a
talking
look
about
at
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody.
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
And I
you've
have to
just
respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
gotta be-
exactly what.
Is this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what.
This
was
is
told.
where he's going. The
All right.
laptop is Russia,
Yes.
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You
okay?
have to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go
President,
again with Russia.
We're going to continue
Boy,
on the
oh,
issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement
What happened to
as
the
a
mics
symbol
being
of
muted?
hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing.
There's that convenient memory again. Trump knows nothing about QAnon, but he hears they're about protecting kids.
Great relationships with all
Always
people.
that little tease
I
in
am the least racist person in this room.
Well, what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that
Least
rhetoric?
racist.
I don't know what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities.
I love black
people. I don't know what to say.
All the black people I love.
I mean,
I love the
they can
blacks.
say anything.
I have an excellent relationship with the blacks.
Makes me sad.
They're
I
my
love
favorite.
Because I am
even
the
love the
least
Mexicans that came from
racist
Coyotes.
person.
I love them
can't
too. I
even
love
see
the Coyote
audience
Mexicans
because
too.
it's so
And
dark.
blacks.
But I
are
don't care
great.
who's in the audience. I'm the
The
least
Coyotes are my
racist
favorite
person in this
are my
room.
favorite family of
Okay,
Mexicans.
Vice President Biden,
The
let me
Los
ask you
Coyotes,
very
it's
quickly,
my
and then I have a
favorite
follow-up
thing.
question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here.
I
is
like
one
how
of
the
most
least
presidents we've
racist
had in
person
modern
is his
history.
defense.
He
Like
pours
I'm the least
fuel
racist person
on
in this
every
room, not outside the
single
room. In this room, I'm the least
fire.
racist person.
Every
Though.
single one.
Well,
Started
only
off his
racists say
campaign
I'm not
coming down the
racist.
escalator saying he's going to
I'm
get
not
rid of
beating
those
real people, but in this
Mexican
room, I'm the least
rapists.
racist. There's
He's
5 people here
banned
get
Muslims
coronavirus, by the way.
because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says to the about
He
the
also
poor
basically
boys,
said he's
last
he's
time we
less
were on
racist than his
stage
own
here,
wife,
he
who's also
told
in the
him to
room too.
stand
By the way,
down and
I'm not as racist as my
this
wife
guy
is. She's
a
pretty
dog
racist.
whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up question.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham
No,
Lincoln.
where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I
saying-
didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln.
Trump said he
has
was the best
anybody
president
done
for the
what
black
I've done for
community,
the black
except maybe
community.
Abraham
Now,
Lincoln.
you
He's made a
have
lot
done
of Lincoln
nothing other
references.
than the
He's a
crime
lot
bill,
of Lincoln
which
references.
put
We are.
Yeah, he said possibly.
This
tens
ain't
of
our first day
thousands
with Trump,
of
y'all. That's what I'm
black
trying to say. This ain't our
men,
first goddamn day
mostly
with
in
Trump.
jail.
All right, let me,
We know
let
this.
me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it,
President
because if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that
Biden
you treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime
Okay.
bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change it since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done, because I think maybe the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to the drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
But
Okay,
why
so-
didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it
You're
done
president
because
now and
you're all
shit ain't
talk
getting
and no
done.
action.
What's
Jim.
We
going
got a
on,
lot of
dude?
it done. We released
get
38,000.
anything
We got
done.
Look at all the race
38,000
riots that are going on in
prisoners
the
left from
country
You
right now.
got
Doc, that's
nothing
under your
done.
administration.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I
Quick
just
response,
asked,
and then we're
I
going to
just
move
asked
on
one
to
question.
climate change.
No one's going to bring up the
Why
ballots in
didn't
California.
you do
No,
it
no.
in the 8 years, a short time ago?
That's what I've been
Why
saying.
didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens
Because-
of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk.
And how many black
and
people
no
died
All
under
right,
your
Vice President Biden,
administration,
and then we're
dude?
going to move on to the next section.
We have a
Under
Republican
police
Congress.
hands.
Yeah, let's listen to Mr. Central Park 5 on how to treat black
That's the
people
answer.
fairly.
Well, you
Okay.
got to talk them into it, Joe. Sometimes
All right.
you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running out of
already done.
time, so we got to get on to
Okay.
climate change, please. You both have very different
Mute the
visions on
fuckers.
climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't
Like, yeah, we're
destroyed our
fucking around in
industries.
chat, but what we're saying is,
Vice
like,
President Biden, 2 minutes
we
to you
don't have
uninterrupted.
clean air. We don't have
Climate
industries.
change, climate
This is all
warming,
lies.
Global
All
warming
lies.
is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it.
And Joe Biden won't
And
do
we're
anything
told by
about it.
all
It
the
won't do
leading
nearly
scientists
enough
in the
because he's
world,
saying the Green
we
New
don't
Deal
have
is way
much
too much.
time.
Ain't
We're going to
so.
pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, you're
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan. That his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people.
What the hell is he talking
anybody.
about?
Frankly, I don't even know how it could be good.
Windows for
they
all.
want to spend
That's his new plan. Everyone gets a window.
That's their real number. He's trying to
Windows Vista?
It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little tiny.
How many times are you going to say 100 trillion?
And many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're
made up
running out of
numbers
time, and we
came
have a
up
lot
with
more
right now
questions
on
to
air.
get
Our
to.
country.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more
I
questions.
don't know where he comes from. I don't know where
We're
he
not
comes
getting to
up with
those
these
questions,
numbers.
ma'am. Sorry.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was, this is plans endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is the solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, 45, 50 bucks an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please respond, and then I have some
We are
follow-ups.
energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds. It's very intermittent. It's got a lot of problems, and they happen to make
Does he know what
windmills
energy
in both
independent
Germany and
means? I don't think he
China.
knows what that
And the
means.
fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
who said that.
I love solar.
Okay, is he
but
going to get
solar
rid of
doesn't
smog
quite
checks
have
too?
it yet.
If he doesn't
It's
believe in
not
carbon, are we not
powerful
going to have
yet
to do smog checks anymore?
to
Are we
really
free on that
run our
now?
big,
This is
beautiful
insane.
factories that we need to compete with
I just
the
want to know
world.
if I get a pass
So
on smog checks
it's all
now
a
forever.
pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want. And what about fracking?
All right,
Now
let
we
me
ask him about
allow
fracking.
Vice
my
President
God.
Biden to
I have
respond.
never said
Stop this
I
man,
oppose
please.
fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Showed
he's
it last
flat lying.
Would you
Flat-
rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it. But it's a transition to that.
What about
I
the
have one
fracking
more question in
earthquakes?
this pod, and then
Excuse
we
me,
have.
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I
Good.
am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land,
The
I
sad
said.
thing
No
is-
fracking
You
and
said
or
fracking.
oil
You
on
didn't say
federal
fracking.
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want
Biden's
to move on
iffy
to
on
our
fracking,
final
so there's that.
section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants.
When
In
is
Texas,
this
there are
over?
families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities.
Ideally, this
Why
is
should
nearly
these
the last
families give
segment.
you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the two of them to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or
even
the
a complete sentence.
statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it. And I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All right.
And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both
Nope.
of you.
My response
wasn't
is
even
that
complete
those
sentence.
people
Those are all
live on what they
fragments
call
right there,
fence
all
lines. She doesn't
fragments.
understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying.
Folks, it's
and
anecdotal
getting cancer.
Joe. Just what we needed for the end of the
Those frontline
debate.
communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them. It matters how you keep them safe. What do you do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's
transition.
a big
Who's the
statement.
moderator,
It
though?
is a big statement
That's a big
because
statement.
I would
Who's
stop
the
Why would
moderator,
you do
though?
that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time, and I'd stop giving to the oil industry. I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas. Excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that
Shut up,
Texas?
bro.
Will you
Okay.
remember that Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then
Ohio.
I have to get to
Moderator
the
is
final
doing a
question.
bad job.
Vice President
Please
Biden.
vote for me. States.
Takes everything
Please
out of
vote for
context.
me.
But the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China
to
to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All
That'll
right, this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me.
The plague,
They
okay.
wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers
There was
in
a
the
plague?
history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian,
Had
people with
jobs.
diplomas, with no
Wetbacks also
diplomas,
had
MIT
jobs.
graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The
Dan,
other
you're
side
tripping, Dan.
wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad
We're
day for
already in
this
a
country.
depression.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country: decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank
you. Yeah. Oh my God, that was some brain smoothing that we just witnessed there. Let me start the recap festivities there. Thank you all for sitting through that with us, for those who have sat with us the whole time. For those who are just joining in and coming on, thank you for that very much. This was a wild one, folks. This was a debate for, I mean, I won't necessarily say this was a wild debate, more so than I would say that this was a ridiculous debate. Like, it was just like fundamentally just like a ridiculous debate, start to finish. I don't even know like where to start or where to finish really, but I would say I don't even know if there was a winner or a loser I can call. I'd say Trump handled himself decently. I think Joe Biden has a lot to be desired in the sense that he missed a lot of opportunities to defend himself. I think most of Donald Trump's sort of comebacks and his things, especially that tough hitting thing, and we'll get onto in a moment about immigration, were just head fakes. They were these things that didn't really make logical sense. They were just kind of trying to rile up Joe Biden, because we all knew this would kind of work to some extent. Because that's the game we talked about as we were coming into the debate itself. We have an issue where Joe Biden's leading in the polls very well. Donald Trump is behind. Donald Trump has a lot coming against him, even though he's the incumbent, and usually elections favor incumbents. So we're trying to look and find out exactly what Trump's strategy is going to be coming into this. And what Trump's strategy was coming into this was just continue to lie and avoid facing any sort of accountability and truths during that lying, and try to deflect and distract and point to his other opponent. So you try to get distracted from the fact that he is simultaneously, and I've said this many times on Power Report before, but Donald Trump is simultaneously trying to be the strong, nothing can stop me, I'm going to own the hell out of the libs kind of politician, while also simultaneously being the candidate who's saying, look, they're doing all these things. I can't do anything. I'm so weak because these strong Democrats in the deep state that are all over everywhere are doing everything they can to counteract my administration. So that just ended up becoming a disaster. Joe Biden had one job, which was to kind of hold the line there and say that, kind of just stand his ground, continue leading, and not lose any ground to Donald Trump, to be able to attack him when he's being attacked, to not fall into the traps. And Joe Biden fell into a lot of traps, because ultimately, I don't even know if Joe Biden could have avoided these, and I'll open it up to the panel for discussion on this, but my take is that the traps that Joe Biden fell in are the traps that he fell in because we picked Joe Biden as a candidate. Like, because the Democratic Party was able to kind of choose and coalesce around having a more moderate candidate who is for what the Democratic Party was for before Donald Trump was elected, that means that Joe Biden also has to apologize for all the things that Obama did, that we realized during the Trump administration. Wow, the Obama administration did some things that made it easier for the Trump administration to do worse things, especially in immigration. And Joe Biden wasn't able to say, oh, no, I'm not like that, or no, I would be different, because his best excuse was to say, oh, I was vice president then, but now I'll be president, and not agree with those same things. Like, it just seems like a ridiculous sort of place that Trump had to sort of debate from. But like, I understand it and I get it. Or like, that Biden had, sorry, it's a ridiculous place that Biden had to debate from, but Biden kind of made his bed there by being moderate. Okay, with that, since the panel is loaded and it's all going, what are your kind of y'all's introductory thoughts as we go into it? Floor is yours.
Well, I don't know if you want to like start at the beginning, but I mean, obviously started talking about COVID, and I mean, we literally got Trump up there talking about a cure like he's talking about like a cure and he might be immune for 4 months or the rest of his life. Like we we're listening to somebody who's is this a damn liar, man? And it's just ridiculous. Like I don't even know like the dude is talking about we got a cure. Like
we're so far out from it.
Like are you kidding me? Like it should be over from there. Like the fact that you get to get on here, oh, we have a cure and I could be immune for 4 months or the rest of my life. Who knows? Like this is just like you're talking to a child. And that's where he started. He's talking about goggles. I never even heard him talk about goggles before.
Yeah.
And there was one thing. Also part of his lies in the COVID part. Biden mentioned how early on Trump said that and I remember specifically when that reporter asked Trump, "Do you take any responsibility?" He said no. And Biden mentioned that he's like, "Yeah, you said you take no responsibility," and Trump's like, "I take full responsibility." Like, come on, dude. Like, what are we doing here?
And then he blamed China right after. He said, I take a full responsibility. He said, well, China's the one. I'm like, what? You can't do that. You can't take full responsibility, then blame somebody else. It's not taking full responsibility.
Like, he would never take accountability for anything. Like, not one single thing ever.
That's just not the game.
Yeah, and when we talk about immigration, actually, in the crime stuff, I want to talk about accountability again. But
Cesar, what are your thoughts?
I thought this was a better debate than the first one. It looked like it started off in the format where I was kind of almost hoping for, and then I guess we just said F that and just let them go loose. I don't need to like muting for the first 10 minutes, but
if I could just interrupt you just to provide some clarity, because a lot of people were asking that, like on Twitter and everything else, like, yo, what's up with the mute thing? I think the media, as tends to happen, just did like a really bad job at informing people what the situation was going to be. Because here's the situation. I mean, regardless, the context being that the first debate was a shit show. People weren't able to get in a word in edgewise. Mostly Trump was interrupting. So at the even thought of COVID restrictions or muting or changing the ability or freedom of any candidate to speak, Trump balked and said, this is ridiculous. No way. The fact that you're changing the debate around the fact that I'm unable to be amenable to having an actual debate itself is ridiculous and far out the scope of what you should be doing, so I forfeit. So he just didn't do the second debate. And that's why, or the scheduled second debate. This should be the third debate that we're covering, but this is the second one, which, let's remember, has not really happened that often in American history, where like one of the presidents just decides to rage quit one of the debates, or the sitting president decides to rage quit the incumbent debate because of a pandemic that president had also exasperated and made worse. So all that's going around. But to get me where your point saying, Cesar, because now I'm going into a tangent, was that it was reported that there was going to be muting during this debate, that was going to be the compromise. I think that made it into a lot of the headlines in order to get it to be clicky and all that stuff. The same things about news that I've talked about hating in many of my videos. But the entire rules this time was going to be that there's going to be muting during the introduction of this debate. So during the opening statements. And, to the extent that there are new topics being introduced, the idea is each candidate's first crack at that new topic is supposed to be uninterrupted. What happened, which is what was going to happen anyways, is that each candidate uses the new question as a time to say, hey, wait, I wasn't done responding to that last thing. And so they get extra time. So like, that's what was going on. I think a lot of people had like bad debate expectations as to for how the mute button was going to go. But that's kind of was the deal. I'm sorry to derail you, Cesar. I'm just going to shut up now. But what else were the rest of your thoughts?
Yeah. I feel that. See, I don't really know what I was talking about.
No. I mean, I remember we were talking about like our feelings from the debate. Bam had just finished talking about like how he was
talking about the mics being muted and how that was whack.
Yeah, but I mean, like overall, I guess with this debate, I just thought that I didn't like that some of the questions I thought that were more impactful from the last debate weren't asked, such as when Bam brought up saying that I would have really loved him to bring up the about him leaving office because he's been kind of like iffy on that. I would have liked to hear him speak more about they didn't really go into much about the coronavirus thing again because that was I felt that was pretty important, and then how it spread to like 6 other people of the cabin and like people that work inside the White House. We didn't kind of really dive into that. He talks about this. He talked about being immune, like he's some superhuman or whatever, and all that. But then he didn't talk about how other people got. He was the reason why other people got infected. Like there was never the moderator said, "Do you want to?" Have you like apologized to the people that you were infected because of your negligence to being exposed to coronavirus? Because he was very negligent about the whole process in general. He was talking about, oh, I have a mask on me. It's just on his pocket somewhere. Like, he was, handshaking, and all of a sudden after he gets sick, he's elbowing people elbow to elbow. So I just think it's really funny on some of that stuff. It felt like he was kind of iffy on it. So but like I said, I think the debate was a lot better this time. It was nice hearing some of Joe Biden's answers, and I think I agree 1,000% what Dan said earlier. If you were sitting watching this debate and you're going, ugh, on some of the answers Joe Biden got, if you voted for Joe Biden, that's what you picked. That's what you picked. You knew this was the bed you made, because a lot of us knew this going in, and we talked about this even on this show, the early versions of Power Report. We talked about on this show on what's going to happen with Biden and what kind of ammo the Republican Party is going to bring up when it comes to Joe Biden. He's going to have to answer some really tough questions that honestly might put presidency at stake for him, depending on how he answers them. So we'll see what happens. I'm in a different place because to me, it's like no matter all the things that he's done, I'm like, it just can't be worse than what we have now. Look at this man. But other people in America don't see it that way. So I'm really interested to see what happens in November.
Dan, you're muted.
Sean, it's your turn.
My turn? Yeet.
Yes.
Wasn't there a plan for the post office to grant out like millions of masks that they gutted? Because that was another thing that was never talked about, because he's saying all this stuff about we did all the best with coronavirus, we did all this stuff. Like you had a whole mandated, the post office had a whole press release ready to say, oh, we're giving each household a certain amount of masks, but it was gutted by the Trump administration because they're trying to get rid of the post office.
Yeah, there's definitely that. I think there was a whole ton of like rewriting of history with how Trump handled coronavirus. Because remember, the Woodward tapes that like were, I mean, this round of Woodward tapes, because Woodward's been coming at those shit since the Nixon days. But this round of Woodward tapes was about how Trump knew about COVID-19 spreading at the earliest points at which not even the public knew, but when government agencies knew. So government agencies knew in like late December, early January. Elizabeth Warren was on the campaign trail talking about her master plan for fixing COVID. And like people knew about these conditions back then during that time. And Trump's response, which was well documented now because the Woodward tapes, was to go, oh, okay, it looks like this crisis is happening. What can I do to avoid that? What can I do to not worry the American people? Not that I'm caring about them worried, because I'm sure not caring about them dying, but mostly because I'm cared about my poll numbers. And I was doing pretty great until this virus happened. So, yeah, it's like we went straight over the fact that the post office had a plan to send out masks. We went straight over the fact that Trump for sure told Woodward that he was downplaying COVID in order to not scare people. At the same time, he was saying that COVID was a hoax of some kind, that masks were not a big deal. The mask messaging was iffy back then. But the whole main point that you're getting at, Sean, I really agree with, is that Donald Trump did a lot of rewriting of history about his COVID response, and neither Joe Biden nor the moderator did a really good job of hitting back. So it's pretty safe to assume that the American public didn't really get and understands back from that. Bam, you got something to say?
Yeah, like, I mean, going back to the Woodward tapes, like you could just tell, like, if you're not an idiot, you know what type of personality Trump has. I'm not going to say what I would call it in private, but he's on the Woodward tapes just like, act like, oh man, I know about this new thing and it's crazy. I'm going to tell you about it. And I think, and forget about this whole, like, I didn't want to panic people because he's a certified liar. I think that he thought it's easier to just politicize it. Like, it's easier to do that because he already knows that the Democratic Party and like people with common sense are going to listen to scientists. So he's like, I can't be in agreement with them. Like, I can't go and say, yeah, I agree with Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, like, or any of these other people. I have to be on the other side. So he just turned into a political thing and it flouted the rules for months and months. And now we're in the situation we are now. But when he gets asked about it, he like, what can you do to push him? He's just gonna lie and rewrite history and just say what like what can you do outside of saying, dude, you're lying? Like, and it can't be Biden saying that. It would have to be the moderator saying that's not what you actually said. And I don't think she's in the position to do that. He's just gonna lie about anything that makes him look bad. Dan's muted.
Audio man Dan.
I keep doing this. I was saying, Bam, you're 100% right. I keep muting myself because I'm drinking these seltzers and I don't want to like get the gulps up there. But like, yeah, I that's kind of the thing I've been talking about in chat as well with the folks watching this debate coverage live, which is awesome. We probably won't get to do this for a while, so thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it live. But that's a lot what I was saying in that chat was that I don't know how well or if at all, like, I don't know how well America's or Americans bullshit meter with Trump is. This is always a difficult conversation because at this point in the election, when we're talking about any of these debates, we're like October on. You haven't made your decision in October of this particular election cycle. I'm kind of, without insulting that person, because I'm trying not to vote shame here, it's hard for me to put myself in the mind of someone who has even access to all this information, even if they don't fully understand it. But if they have curiosity, they can go out and look and kind of figure out this information for themselves. I have a hard time believing who hasn't decided yet, but who still believes that Donald Trump might be a person to hear them out enough because they might be telling the truth. Like, in order to be that kind of person, you're just so removed from the political conversations that all of us are basing our knowledge off of that it's just really hard for us to analyze this because I'm making all of these analyzations and kind of ideas about Joe Biden and Donald Trump based on all the stuff I know about politics. And I try to like make that informative for the people who are watching. But for those out there who we're kind of looking at, like in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Arizona and Texas and Florida and all the swing states, what are they thinking right now? What are the independent voters thinking? What context about Trump do they have from before this debate that is working against him or working for him? I really don't know because to even be in that mindset's a little crazy to me. I just don't. Yeah.
Yo, every person in America knows that Trump is a bullshitter. Unless like, there's a very small percentage of people that think that he's telling the truth. The other people know he's a lying sack of shit, but they're gonna vote for him anyway. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, he's gonna get up there and say whatever, but they're just gonna vote for him no matter what. But they know he's lying. Like, but a lot of people, especially Republicans, especially people that vote Republican, are single issue voters. Like, they're just voting on abortion, you know, or they're just they're just voting like who's the one that's you know, the more racist one. Like that, like that's what they're voting on. And I do want to get it like because I mean, I don't know if we're going in chronological order, but we can talk about immigration.
We're going in any order we want to because it's just like we're taking the debate as it is.
So
I'm happy to talk about immigration. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
because
Sean.
I mean, because also, Dan, you had some stuff you want to say about immigration too.
No, it's all good. Sean, what are you going to say?
I mean, I have a lot of notes about stuff in general. One thing was about with the climate change stuff. I mean, obviously we live here in California and it was completely on fire and still parts of it are on fire. And Colorado is having its biggest fire in its entire history right now over in a little bit west of Boulder right now. And they didn't. I wish Biden would have gone on Trump about that and say, "What are you managing about with climate change when the entire country is burning? Not just those two states, but a bunch of states around, which we have talked about a couple of times on Power Report. But it's very important within climate change because those are the things that are drying out climates that are doing things that cause fires. Where the fire seasons are lasting longer, they're getting worse and worse every year. I mean, when we grew up, it was, you know, every couple of years it'd be a bad fire, but now it's every single year. There's at least one or two major bad fires here. So that's something that should have been pointed out a little bit more.
I thought it was kind of an opportunity that Joe could have really went harder on when it came to the climate control or climate change and what's going on with the fires. Because I mean, that's the most self-evident thing today. I mean, even though the fires here in Southern California, the ash that we had here kind of died down. Just yesterday, I was driving to LA and I was like, damn, it's like super gross still. So I don't know what he's talking about. Clean as it's ever been. I don't know where he gets to just say any statement he really gets like wants to say, and there's no factual evidence. He gets to throw numbers around like 100 trillion and all these numbers and say whatever you want because what Bam says is true. A lot of people are single issue voters. They don't even care about any of that. Like they don't even care. Honestly, even if actually thinking about it, even if he did kind of bring up the fires, Trump would have said something about like these being blue states, and then our governors did this to our state. It was like he would have literally said it's our fault. Like it's our fault that they're burning down and stuff like that. Even though I'm like, what the hell did I do?
We're not.
Like, all right, like I've literally never even been to Eureka in my life, but okay, I guess I'm the reason it's burning down. It's a big ass state.
We're not raking the leaves off the floor of the forest enough.
Well,
so
I'm sorry about a Prius.
That's federal stuff too. That's a lot of federal land that needs to be done up and cleaned up. So it's not like the states can do it. As much as I don't like Gavin Newsom, Newsom's like, that's federal land. I can't help that much. So can you give me help within that to help forest management? If that's the thing you want to talk about within fires. So
yeah, Mr. Accountability likes to blame everybody else but himself for other issues. Likes to blame other states. He probably would say something like, "Oh, the red states aren't burning like that," so I don't even know. Like he gets more out of division out of the state. The more divided it becomes, this red versus blue damn thing we're pushing now through this since the Trump campaign, the red versus blue thing hardcore. That like wins him. Like the division wins him. Like if there's unity, then that's a problem for him. He can't have us, agreeing with other states and states agreeing with us. That's a problem for him. And the United States, that'd be a problem for him.
Yeah, I got so much to say there, but I want to kind of keep it moving a little bit. We're gonna get into. I guess this is my last thing about climate change. Like we're saying Trump should be the one coming to the rescue here, and not like you or Sean, people are saying that. Like people are saying, how did Trump to respond to this? Trump has federal land. He should be doing all this, that, and the other thing. Trump appointed to the Secretary of the Interior, all the people who are in charge of public lands, people who are tasked with, for lack of a better term, raping our public lands so that they can be extracted for oil, for natural gas, for fracking. So earthquakes can happen, so people's livelihoods can be destroyed for what? Energy dependency, for oil, while we're just in the middle of moving our economy off of that. Like, it's ridiculous. But I really, 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 really do want to go to immigration because this was the most brain-smoothening part of the whole thing. And it's going to lead into an interesting point that I want to kind of tie into as we get near the end here, because I think it'll be a really interesting question, especially for the Power Report crew. But like on immigration, I think we just both agree here that like both sides
they fucking suck.
They fucking suck, right? Like Trump, like to set the record straight, because the record does need to be set straight here every once in a while. Donald Trump's policy of immigration and the increase of use of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, CBP, all of these different agencies, Department of Homeland Security, the expansion of these newly created agencies that were created under the Bush administration, mind you, mostly, to police the border, to create all these extra private prisons in order to separate children from families at the border, to sexually abuse children, to physically assault men and women and all these different people who are coming from on the other side of the border, sending everyone back to Mexico, even though there are people from Guadalajara, from El Salvador, from Panama, from all these other different countries who are escaping. By the way, the reason they're immigrating here is because of political strife and struggles that have been caused by a half a century of American foreign policy in Central and South America. So let's not forget that. But Donald Trump's immigration policy has been one of the most inhumane things done on American soil since the internment of Japanese Americans in the 1940s during World War II. Hands down. The fact that it's not the biggest issue happening all over political discourse in this country is attuned to the fact that Trump is fucking even more shit up on a level that even meets up that thing. But we are doing horrible human rights abuses at the border that, like, as an American citizen, I hate just about every single day. I'm thinking about this. Even though I'm not directly related to this, I'm thinking about this every single day, that in my name, these atrocities are happening at the border. And so that's Donald Trump's policy. But the truth is, Donald Trump's policies are continuing a lot of things the Obama administration did. It's not the Obama, like, yeah,
How many people did Obama deport?
Yeah, Obama administration deported a record number of people, more than any president had done so before then. I don't even think Trump has reached those numbers yet. We didn't have these rampant cases of abuse and detention in ICE facilities, but the infrastructure was made so Donald Trump could do the old tech thing and scale it up and make it so we're doing this at a higher scale. So maybe don't open that Pandora's box, don't open that gate when you first get to it. And look, unfortunately, we have Obama's partner in crime, Joe Biden, right there to answer for all of these things. And it's a horrible thing, because when Donald Trump brings up the argument that, hey, Joe Biden, what did you do when you were vice president? What would you do when you were president? What did you do when it's in your administration? Unfortunately, Donald Trump is right. And so this is kind of the fight that progressives, the true progressives, even on, like, I don't even say Warren, fuck them in this case, but like the people on the Bernie side, were arguing this forcefully, that there are certain things where it doesn't look nice, it doesn't look pretty, but the Obama administration and the Democratic Party have messed up to this point and made it harder to argue rhetorically and strategically on the merits of a sane and safe immigration policy. And this doesn't make it that, like, again, like as we said on Power Report multiple times, unfortunately, Joe Biden is still the better pick throughout all of this, but it makes it very horrible to have to, like, do these as a person with morals and some, like, kind of political compass where I don't like to flip-flop on things. This is very much a flip-flop happening right here. So that's just all my shit of hating about immigration. I know y'all are popping off in chat, but Bam, what are your thoughts?
Can I just ask for Sean to type a little less loud?
Sean on his 1940 Apple I computer.
No, I mean, the only thing is, I just don't know if it's like cutting Dan out. I don't want him to, like, because I mean, but it is loud.
No, it's not cutting Dan out.
Okay,
not cutting him out.
I'll
make sure I'm muted.
But
go ahead, Dan. Go.
Okay, good. I had a few things to say about the immigration talk. Just like, I'm not here to defend what happened in regards to immigration under Obama, because one, I can't pretend to know a whole lot about it or know the details. Like, it's not like I know everything. But I do think rhetoric matters. And the way that Trump has emboldened, like, the worst parts of ICE and Border Patrol, I think that there's a difference. Like, I remember when they, like, got into some of those Facebook groups of, I think it was ICE or whatever, like these ICE agents and Border Patrol, like, they're like showing, I mean, I don't even want to repeat some of the stuff that came out of there. But, and even when some politicians and reporters were going to the places where they were holding children, like, they're being intimidated by, like, these ICE agents and Border Patrol agents. Also, the asylum rules, which Joe Biden brought up, which I thought was, I mean, sometimes, I'm gonna keep it real. Like, sometimes Joe Biden shocks me about like some of the stuff he brings up, because I'm not expecting him to bring up anything coherent. But when I went to go give food to, like, some of the refugees there in Tijuana, like, I got into a long conversation with this woman before we went across the border about asylum rules. I'm like, literally, I never even heard of a country where people go to apply for asylum and they send them back to the country they came from. Like, that's insanity. Like, even Iran will hold the Afghan people in Iran if they come to ask for asylum. Like, when people go from, like, Venezuela to Colombia and likewise, like, they don't send you back to the country you came from while you're applying for asylum. That's completely insane. And that's just to feed to the worst parts of Trump's base. Like, never heard anything like that. Every single country in the world will let you stay while, like, you might be staying in squalor, but they're going to keep you there while you're applying for asylum. And Trump made all these deals with all these poor Central American countries. Here's $1 billion, and you just make sure you don't be bringing immigrants here, or make sure you trap them on your border. I mean, and I'll give Joe Biden some credit for saying that during the Obama administration they made some mistakes, because politicians rarely admit their mistakes. Like like even when I remember in 2016, like when Hillary Clinton, all those debates, I feel like she was smug the entire time and never once would say, "I'm sorry for that" or "that was a mistake." And I think
Yeah.
that cost her a lot.
And that's what a lot of people disliked about her. And really fast, just to let you continue, Bam. That's what a lot of people are worried with Kamala Harris. At least I'll speak for myself for sure. But
she did okay, yeah, and I don't know, like I haven't really, I don't know
and
about that.
at least in the Democratic primary, she
Yeah,
was very reticent to apologize for her past, which is really what, like, I am actually have a lot of leeway for a politician just like straight lying to me. Like, I is like, or a straight like screwing up. I have a bit more leeway than I think people will believe. Not that I don't notice it, but it's all about like, when will you apologize? Will you actually own up to your actions, or are you just this immovable thing? Which most politicians appear to be immovable. They act that way.
yeah, and this is exactly what we're seeing from Trump on any issue. But I think that's sadly what people like about him. Um, like that's the white privilege for Trump right there. So yeah, he did say that he did say sorry about some things, that they made some mistakes. Will he fix those? I don't know. Um, but I think one of the biggest issues that I'm sure you guys are going to talk about too is when Trump talked about the people that came to show up for their immigration court hearings were low IQ people. Like, if anybody is like, and sadly, I seen somebody on Twitter that is supposed to be some principled, respectable leftist is like already both siding that statement. Like, that's unbelievable to me. Like, how do you compare anything that Joe Biden said in that immigration talk to him saying the people that came to try to do their immigration stuff legally, those are low IQ people. Like, that's like the most
Okay, I'm getting
ridiculous.
mad.
Yeah, like I mean, and the fact that I got to see Max Blumenthal respond, and then Biden said, like, no, dude, like you stop it right there. The person that's going to figure out their immigration stuff legally is a low IQ person. Like, if that doesn't sit in with somebody, like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, like that was, it goes to that thing Trump was saying about, oh, if you pay full price in taxes, you're stupid. Like, oh, if you can't find ways to work around taxes, you're dumb. It's like Trump says he's doing the rules, but if you push a little bit and catch him in a lie, he says, oh, well, you're dumb to not like screw with the system. You're dumb to not try this.
How many people in I'm gonna let you go right after the season. I got to go off a little bit more. We got people, there's immigrants in the chat, there's in on this power report, people that have immigrants in their families. You're telling me that this dude gets to say you were dumb because you went to court to figure it out legally? Trump saying Caesar's mom was dumb. She went to court to try to get a immigrant. She's dumb. She's low IQ. You should have just been like and then he said murderers and rapists are the people that don't go. Like that's what he said. Now Caesar got to go since I got him turned up.
It's just like, it's baffling me because it's like with him, it's like no matter what an immigrant kind of does in this country, they're just set up to like do it wrong. Like if you come across illegally, I'm sorry, according to Trump, if you come across guided by coyotes, I guess, in the desert, then we gotta like do something about that. But if you're doing this the legal way, then you're dumb. Like what is the process? I think it's just, you can just flat out say you think that anybody that's from south of the American border is an idiot. Just say that. Like just come out and say that, because that's what it feels like. It feels like there's no right in this situation. And I 1,000% agree with Bam. I mean, one of the things that I was always kind of bothered to me, like it always was kind of creepy to me during like the Obama administration, is like I part of me would be really happy about like when Obama was elected, and then like some of the immigration standards, some of the bills they're passing, some of the border stuff. I was like, wait a minute, like, dog, I thought we were cool though. So it was like kind of tough. It was kind of tough. So I really want to commend Joe Biden because, like Bam said, it's rare for people to admit they made mistakes in life in general. So a politician to do it, like saying that we messed up, I appreciate that, because I don't expect you to be perfect. I don't even know what proper bills to write. So if you write something that's wrong, I appreciate you apologizing for that to that extent. But like, there's not an ounce of that in Donald Trump. Everything is smug. You're literally trying to tell us that, like, oh, like, I just called up this dude, and this dude is handling this, and I set this deal up with him, and then when this deal is finished, I'm gonna give you guys the taxes. I just called him up. I mean, I've been paying taxes a long time on TurboTax. Who's this dude you get to call up that you get to prepay? I want to prepay a couple years. What's up with the prepay? So it's just like it's just really weird. Some of the stuff, like, it's like, oh, like a true American, follow the rules, and here's ICE to impose this, and here's the police force. But also, like, I have a system in place, but kind of game it to your advantage. Play around a little bit, get some money here, get some money there, sneak across the border here and there to get some bread. Whatever you got to do. It's all literally just a heaping mound of lies and BS. And someone who is an immigrant, 2008, I got my citizenship. As a kid, I was told that when I got my citizenship, that, like, this is my mom. I remember the day my mom got it for me. My mom was crying, dude. My mom was crying. She was crying all day. She said, Cesar, do you know how long we've been working to get this? I came to this country in 1996. I didn't become a citizen until '08. So she was crying her tears off about how happy she was. And I didn't understand why. I didn't get it. I was like, oh, I mean, that's awesome. Like, all right, like, cool. Like, what's going to happen now? Am I like a superhero? Like, I don't get it. So
your ass ain't got to go back to Brazil.
I mean, I was a permanent resident. So regardless, I was fine. But the thing is like, stop. So the thing is like, so many people work so hard for this, to be included, to be called an American, to get the feeling of being included, to be already paying taxes for so many years, but that doesn't matter. It's finally got the citizenship and this badge, and you raise your hand in downtown LA, and they say, now you're an American. Like, that's the feeling that so many immigrants fight for, and immigrants that have gone through a lot harder process than me. I didn't get guided by sloths through the desert. I was just brought on an airplane with my mom. Like, it's nothing. It's just we took a different process. Everybody's different process, but I just didn't think that it was cool. I didn't think that was
canceled.
Cool. Like, I don't like that.
Huh? So another thing
that, canceled.
Going off of what y'all said with him saying that you're stupid for your taxes, this and that. Another thing was throwing it back to coronavirus. He was saying how, I got the best treatment, this and that, and he'd probably be the same thing. Like, you are stupid for not getting the same treatment when he got like the best medical treatment on planet Earth, when Americans, half of them are uninsured, or way more than that aren't insured, or don't have access to any health care at all.
Even if you are insured, even if you are, you're paying thousands of dollars for that stuff.
Yep.
You swear, like
ambulance ride is what, $3,000 at least.
At least I've seen $30,000 for people going to Mark Zuckerberg Hospital in San Francisco, California, and they're paying $30,000 for an ambulance charge when Mark Zuckerberg makes that in milliseconds, dog. I am going to do some incredible hosting here and controlling and directing, which is that I'm going to drop a question and then dip because I got to piss like a racehorse, but y'all will talk and then I'll come back and answer the question.
Hope my headphones last this long.
Do you think at this point, would Bernie Sanders have done better in this sort of debate? Or would he even be doing better in this election? I think it's a good question that I will listen to your responses while I go pee. But yes, let's go check what your thoughts are.
Yeah. I mentioned this in the chat, and Cesar disagreed with me. I've gone back and forth with it, obviously, like, because I did like Bernie as a candidate, but I do feel like there's a lot of different things. I do feel like, I've had to like come to terms with this. Like, my politics aren't necessarily the mainstream of America's politics. I think we saw a lot of that with the primary. Like, Bernie was doing good in certain demographics, and then other demographics, like, he got beat pretty bad. I think it is more of a centrist nation, and I think that Trump would have been able to play so hard on like the socialists, and like Bernie Sanders' godlessness. Like, I think that would have been hard for him to overcome. Like, what do you say when somebody's like, "Isn't this guy an atheist?" Like, you're gonna have no atheist president in America. Like I don't know what you'd have first, like an unmarried president or an atheist president. Like I do feel like Trump would have been bringing that up, and it's hard to it's going to be hard in the United States of America to overcome like certain things about your religion or lack thereof, or like he's not going to say anything about him being Jewish, but like just like the socialism thing and like, oh, you're going to just take everybody's freedoms and this, like, I think that would be hard for him to overcome.
There's a couple of things. One, I think the being a Jewish card will definitely hurt him in a regard because people are extremely anti-Semitic in this country, especially the evangelical right are very anti-Semitic. Ironically, they are obsessed with Israel, but that's a whole different subject anyways. Another thing is the whole socialist card, because an issue is that, as I'm typing it out in chat, is that a lot of people do not understand what it even is. First off, he's not even a fucking socialist. He's a social democrat. In any other country, he's like center left. Like if he's in Germany, he's like center left. He isn't even in like the Green Party, which is a left party there, pretty much any other country, more or less. So that's the whole thing when the entire political system is skewed to the right here, like insanely right, that people don't understand that. So it's one hurdle you have to get over. But the one thing that I think is in his favor is a lot of his policies are quite popular in just the general public. So example, universal healthcare, if he gets on stage and is actually able to talk about it, people are like, oh wow, he isn't as bad as I thought, because the education system here is horrible and doesn't talk about what actual leftist ideas are, because we barely had any left presidencies, if any, really. I mean, center left at most with Jimmy Carter, but he's a neoliberal, so that's more center. Anyways, so within that, then once he's able to talk about the policies and not make it like the big oogie boogie man of socialism, people actually understand it, then that's when he would do better. I think in 2016, he would have done a lot better than he would have done now, per se. Like in 2016, he would have wiped the floor. He would have wiped Trump's nose, as Bam likes to say. That's Bam's favorite says right there. Just slit. He would have wiped his nose, wiped the floor down. This year would have been a little bit different, but I think he would have been better off, and Biden, just because of the whole pandemic thing in general as well. But it could also sway either way because there's a lot with it. So
I'm gonna disagree with Bam, and I was kind of thinking about this a while. Like, I think it is a great point that I think until 2016 it would have been like a lot more clear cut for Bernie Sanders, like for sure. But I still think Bernie Sanders would have been to pull it out. Okay, that's great. I still think Bernie Sanders would have pulled it out this year because I think we're kind of underestimating the impact of the pandemic this year on Americans in general. I think that I know that how we feel about it. I know how the Republican. No, I know how Donald Trump and some of his, the followers like to kind of talk about this on the internet, like to be that first comment person on Twitter with the wild claim. But I think that it's not really just about people contracting coronavirus, but I think that the massive number of unemployment we had this year, the how many people lost their insurance plans and had to switch over to, if you're in California, you had to get the health net plan or whatever the hell you're doing. That stuff is a mess. It was a mess. I myself dealt with it. It wasn't easy, and I still don't even know what the hell I have right now. It's weird. So I think it's nothing too simple. I think that affected people more than we understand. And I think that in the debate format, I don't know, of course, let's just plug and replace Joe Biden, coronavirus, everything included with Trump. I think that in that format, I think Sanders would show his hand better in terms of like being able to communicate. I think sometimes that communication factor is big, and I don't think Bernie Sanders has as many like gray areas and iffy past things that Trump could really attack with. Like, yeah, you can attack, but he's bringing up those quotes from 1994 and talking about his immigration plan under Obama. Those are actually big points. A lot of Americans do kind of look at that and be like, I mean, you were there. Like, he's right, you were there. What did you really do? I can imagine that being in the mindset of people who are the swing vote. And with Bernie Sanders, that's a fresh face. So if you're kind of like, if you kind of voted for Trump and you're like, man, like this sucked. Like, he's acting like it's all good and he's superhuman, but I've been having a tough time just getting by. Maybe a fresh face again is something new. He might appeal to that. So that's why I'm kind of sitting on like, I still think he could pull it out just based upon the format of how Bernie Sanders would deliver things, having not as much, I guess, dirt on him as Biden has to answer to and will be answering to. And when these smear campaigns come out, I think it'll just keep going. So I personally think Bernie Sanders could still squeak that, but it would be really close. And I wouldn't be surprised if he lost too. I think it'd be a lot closer. But 16 for sure slide through.
What do you think, Dan?
I think that Sean. No, Sean's back. That's good. But I think that
I need to switch headphones, so I'll be back in a second.
all good. No, I unders. It's a really interesting point that y'all were bringing across. I was listening to the whole time, truthfully. I do agree with you, Bam, in the one hand that like this is a totally different country and all of the red baiting would have definitely worked because it worked within the Democratic Party and what they were doing to red bait against Bernie Sanders and make him seen as further left as he was. I don't know if like I know he's talked about like his not being religious very much, but I think his Jewish identity, being culturally Jewish, was very important, especially in the context of this election when you have the idea of fascism and white identitarianism once again on the forefront in the United States, like body politic, as the way that's kind of being talked about. But then again, I do agree with some of the things that Caesar's saying, that if Bernie Sanders had somehow slugged it through, this would be a different messaging game because Bernie Sanders is a different messaging animal. Bernie Sanders wouldn't have done this sort of like kowtowing pussyfooting with the with the Trump administration that Nancy Pelosi, that Dianne Feinstein, that Chuck Schumer are doing, where it's like, oh look, clearly we're all acting in good faith here and we all want the best for the country. No, that's very much not the case. Trump wants what's best for his poll numbers and what's best for his political sort of future. While, yeah, I mean, Biden's just there. He's the avatar of the Democratic Party now. That's what it is. But I think Bernie Sanders would have put together a better message. And yeah, for those people who wanted to vote for Donald Trump because they wanted to go against the system, he represented Bernie represented something more that was like going against that system. There are a bunch of people who like hated the establishment of things and said, yeah, I want to vote Trump because I just want to say screw you to all those politicians. But yeah, if Bernie had a chance, yeah, him too, because we're all on the same side of screw you. So I think that there's an untapped market that was there that Bernie could have definitely gone into, but we are talking about like what if scenarios at this point. I think that, yeah, while COVID was a really big thing happening, ultimately it is going to be very hard to fight against that Bernie, you're a socialist thing. That's kind of going out there, which sucks because honestly that doesn't bother me. I don't think that would bother people during a pandemic, especially. But it also sucks that when you see Joe Biden say, hey, I fought this primary, I beat the socialist, all that stuff. And like, it sucks. I know he has to say those things to appeal to the people that are in the Democratic Party like that, or like to appeal to the moderates that are watching this debate and are undecided. But that sucks. He's like does not care. It shows that Joe Biden does not care about this entire political constituency that helped him get elected. Well, let's start to wind down now. But let's get some last thoughts, Caesar. I know you.
And just really quick off that, I mean, I think it was a great point, like brought out in chat also. Like, I mean, I think that we had a certain viewpoint. Americans had a certain viewpoint about Bernie's agenda and his plans and stuff when America was at a different stage of itself at the time. And then since then, I think that his stuff kind of were like, especially when there was one stimulus package, the entire pandemic, people were like, whoa, like damn, actually that stuff would have kind of helped. Like that, I think that kind of gained strength in itself. And also like I know you guys brought up the whole anti-Semitism thing, and I absolutely agree, America is like that, but I would kind of find it a hard ground for Trump to like attack that, because it's like if we're just plug and switching Biden and Bernie Sanders and everything that's happened today is still happening. Like I think the last dude to kind of really want to flex on Bernie Sanders about him not being like very Jewish and how Americans feel about Jews in general, but like you were like bringing out military to clear out people so you can take a Bible picture out front. Like there's attacks and counterattacks across the board, so it would just really be up to how the debate would go down, in my opinion. Like how the debate goes down will really factor into how important those topics are, and not necessarily like something like if they brought up it's doomed for him. Like how he responds in the debate would be really important.
Yeah, I'm just gonna respond really quick. Like, and it honestly, like I'm not even like super sold that Bernie would do that. I'm like 51-49, but I wasn't saying that Trump or they would hit on him being Jewish necessarily as much, but like him not being Christian. And honestly, like that is still a really big thing in this country. Like if you point out somebody, and to my knowledge, Bernie Sanders is an atheist Jewish person. So not even that he's Jewish, that he is an atheist. Like godlessness is something that's just like an anathema in this country. Like that's a hard thing to get over. You don't see very many like public out there. I'm a non-believer in God, and I think that Trump would be able to play on that a lot, regardless. But at the same time, like it, I don't know how it would go. But yeah, like during a pandemic, that would a lot of those policy talking points would help Bernie a lot. But we also see how good Trump is at changing the subject. So it would be tough. But at the same time, I'm like 51-49. Like, I don't know. I would much rather see Bernie up there, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's been like journalists have had a hard time figuring out whether or not Bernie's like agnostic or atheist or whatsoever. He's kind of like kept that purposely sort of obscured for the reasons you're saying, Bam, because like it would be tough if he were an atheist running, because like it's a very deeply Christian country. We're seeing that in our Supreme Court choice. But yeah, like overall, to kind of wrap that idea up, I don't know if Bernie would have necessarily done better in this position exactly, but I think there would have been definitely some pros and cons to the debate style. Just to wrap this up, because Sean was dipping, it's kind of like a last word of general debate feelings, or like if Bernie would have done better. I think we'll do another power report right before the general election happens, and then one after that, so we can like have all of our thoughts out there. But make sure you're all subscribed for that. But yeah, Sean, last thoughts.
I mean, I have still some notes, so I'm just gonna go randomly, like just sporadic fire. You don't have to respond to them, but these are just some of my rambling thoughts I wrote on my drive. First off, they never talked about ballot boxes that were the fake ballot boxes that were put in by the California Republicans in Orange County and in other parts of the state of California. And nothing has been done about it because technically it's not illegal. So even though the state of California said, please remove those fake ballot boxes, California Republicans said, nah, we're leaving them there. So that is voter fraud at its finest. Also, somebody burned down a Baldwin Park ballot box as well. So that's that part. And then
what the demographics of Baldwin Park?
Yeah, extremely multicultural there.
Some fake ballot boxes in Orange County?
Yes. Yeah, very not. Extreme opposite of white in Baldwin Park. And then we already talked about stuff with global warming, stuff with healthcare. Big thing is that they didn't talk about was war. How are we not talking about endless wars? I mean, how many countries are we bombing? 8 or 9 right now? Trump was campaigned on this whole thing about being anti-war, about bringing the troops home when he hasn't done shit. When he said, "Oh, we're going to bring troops we're going to bring troops from Afghanistan home," when there's still 5,000 troops deployed there. I mean, I know multiple people that are.
Said he's going to take the troops out of Germany and just reposition them within, just to watch Russia, as they said.
Yes.
Cesar, what was that?
No, it's an excellent point, because I mean, there was the whole HBO interview he did where he like talked about like in weeks. He was like, in a couple of weeks, in a few weeks, he talked about like, we're gonna be getting it done. The reporter, I always forget his name, was like, yeah, he was like, oh well, he's like, can we get a date on that? He's like, I don't have a date for you right now. So, like I said, everything will brush past and moved on. Excellent point, Sean.
Yeah, and he's increased drone strikes from Obama, which Obama is the drone king. If you look at Dan's wallpaper on his phone, we want to frame that in our house one day. It is the most wonderful thing ever devised by man. Dan has to open it real quick. Yeah, there it is. Obama drone king right there. What the hell? It is my favorite thing ever. The fact that he has droned more, increased drone strikes by about 100% to Obama's drone strikes is atrocious, and no one ever talks about that.
Abby Martin does.
Yeah, Abby Martin. That's about it. Freedom Fighter there.
Future Power Report guest, maybe?
Yeah, I would love that. So those are kind of some of my notes, and then also that Jimmy Carter gave up his peanut farm, and Trump hasn't done shit for his businesses. So that all his stuff about the business stuff with the Biden's stuff is all cap, because the amount of money that he launders through the Saudi Arabia government through his own businesses is a lot, and no one ever talks about that.
Yeah, there's really fast, Sean. Yeah, there's so much that wasn't gotten to in this debate. Mainly, none of these debates had a really good foreign policy angle. And I'll give them like some pass that like we canceled one of the debates, so I'm sure they would have had more time to talk about this. But no, in general, America, like, and including the media apparatus as well, is very wishy-washy with foreign policy and what we are okay with certain aspects of the government doing in some cases, but not okay with here. Or like in China, how all of a sudden America cares about human rights abuses when they're happening in China, which is fair. They are happening. We should care about them. But we don't care about them when they're happening on our southern border, or when they're happening in the Congo, or when they're happening in other places that America has thoroughly screwed up.
Nigeria
as well.
Well, they did talk a little bit about foreign policy, and I would like to point out that Trump was way more hawkish on Russia than Biden was. He talked about selling. He talked about selling them weapons to Ukraine, which Obama declined. And he's he's talking about. I mean, they're putting troops on the border of Russia already. He's talking about getting more money from NATO, which is hawkish. This is not an anti-war president. I don't know if anybody still believes that crap anymore. He's a hawk, 100%. Basically, I mean, there's a narrative that the Democrats in Russia is like, dude, he's saying it himself. Like he's tough. Like he's put sanctions on Russia. The situation with Russia is just as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll leave it there at that. Thank you all for joining us on this special Power Report episode 14. Really fast, I'll go through plugs. Bam and Cesar can be found on We Made It Podcast. Check out We Made It Podcast on all social media platforms. Sean and I can be found on all podcast platforms. AudioFace Podcast, at AudioFace Pod on Twitter and Instagram and most other places. Bam is at Free Discussion Society on Instagram. freediscussionsociety.com as well. We should be doing another one before the election, right? Or
October 29th, next Thursday coming up.
There we go. And yeah, Cesar, you got anything coming up? Or you're just like doing your thing?
Yeah, just me and Sean's keyboard. We'll be on Among Us later today as well.
I need to go to bed.
And
I keep forgetting about myself.
Yes, please. I see a lot of people in this chat. Really, I think they do a good job of really expressing their different views on what's going on. Please, drop by the Freedom Discussion Society. There will be next week. We love to take anybody. It's on Zoom. Anybody in the world can join. Just China's going to be knowing about it. So just drop in, come through. Maybe Bam can provide a link or something like that in the chat or to his website. What has on the website on the day of, he'll be dropping a link for you guys to come into Zoom and join us, and we can have a discussion together. It'd be awesome. So please come through to that.
Day of, minutes before. Check freediscussionsociety.com for the Zoom link.
The live drop.
Yes, AudioFace, very exciting. Also, as we're doing our end of the year stuff, music-wise, music reviews, AudioFace awards, all that good stuff. So just be subscribed to all of our things. And Dan from the internet, we just passed 1,000 subscribers on the channel. So thank you all for doing that.
Now you're Dan's house.
Now I need hella more watch hours and I can start making money off this bitch. All right. Thank you all. And yes, thank you all in chat, especially for joining and keeping this fun with all of us, being engaged. If I could Skype all of you in and manage the tech issues, we'd do it. It'd be really fun. But we appreciate the
someone said that we should stream election.
Yo, let's come back election night. I'm down.
The reason I don't want to do election night is because we're not going to get an answer.
We're not going to get an answer because of all of the mail-in voting.
Oh yeah, we're in America. It takes 4 days. My bad.
Let's
do Brazil then.
As much as I'd love to stay awake, I'd love to stay awake until 2 a.m. with y'all. I don't think it's gonna work.
Brazil's instant. Let's go to Brazil's. Well, it's instant robbery. Let's go there.
It's too stressful. The 2016 election, when I started seeing all them states going for Trump, I was like, my heart was just going down.
I'm not gonna lie, that would have been a bad one. I was like, that was definitely an emotions ride to all time low. I don't want to be live for that because I actually never want to watch that again.
Yeah, you don't want to end up in one of those recap videos of watching these liberals react to Trump
like the Young Turks, like the Young Turks.
Yeah, we're heading a little close to home. We're heading a little close to home now, so I guess we're gonna end here. Thank you very much. And
thank you everybody in the chat. Love you guys.
Talk soon. Peace.